Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Sebastian fidgeted in his seat, his palms slick with sweat. The annual performance review loomed before him like an insurmountable mountain, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his entire future hinged on the next few minutes. He'd poured his heart and soul into his work over the past year, burning the midnight oil and sacrificing weekends in pursuit of that coveted promotion. Miss Johnson's office door swung open with a soft click, and Sebastian's heart leapt into his throat. The formidable CEO cut an impressive figure in her tailored charcoal suit, her salt and pepper hair swept back into a sleek bun. Her piercing green eyes fixed on Sebastian, and a hint of a smile played at the corners of her lips. "Sebastian, come in. Let's get started, shall we?" He rose on unsteady legs, smoothing his tie and straightening his shoulders as he followed her into the office. The door closed behind him with a soft thud, sealing his fate. Miss Johnson settled into her plush leather chair, gesturing for Sebastian to take a seat across from her. He perched on the edge of the chair, his back ramrod straight, as she shuffled through a stack of papers on her desk. "I've been reviewing your performance over the past year, Sebastian," she began, her tone neutral. "Your dedication to the company is commendable. You've consistently exceeded your targets and shown a willingness to take on additional responsibilities." Sebastian's heart soared. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. He opened his mouth to express his gratitude, but Miss Johnson held up a hand, silencing him. "However," she continued, "there's one area where I believe you still have room for growth." The air rushed out of Sebastian's lungs as if he'd been punched in the gut. His mind raced, frantically searching for any shortcomings he might have overlooked. Had he mishandled a client? Failed to meet a crucial deadline? Miss Johnson leaned back in her chair, fixing Sebastian with an appraising look. "In today's business world, empathy and understanding are crucial qualities for effective leadership. We need executives who can connect with all our employees and clients, regardless of gender." Sebastian nodded eagerly, relief washing over him. "Of course, Miss Johnson. I completely agree. I've always strived to be an inclusive and understanding colleague." A wry smile tugged at Miss Johnson's lips. "I'm sure you have, Sebastian, but I have a challenge for you, one that I believe will truly broaden your perspective and make you a more well-rounded leader." Excitement bubbled up in Sebastian's chest. This was his chance to prove himself once and for all. "I'm ready for any challenge, Miss Johnson. What did you have in mind?" Miss Johnson's eyes glinted with amusement. "I want you to spend a week in the office dressed as a woman." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment Sebastian was certain he'd misheard. He blinked rapidly, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "I'm sorry, Miss Johnson, but could you repeat that? I'm not sure I understood correctly." She chuckled, leaning forward to rest her elbows on the desk. "You heard me correctly, Sebastian. 1 week, starting next Monday. You'll come to work dressed in women's business attire. Skirts, blouses, heels, the works. You'll attend meetings, give presentations, and interact with clients as you normally would, but from a completely different perspective." Sebastian's mind reeled. This had to be some kind of joke, right? He searched Miss Johnson's face for any sign that she was pulling his leg, but her expression remained serious. I don't understand," he stammered. "How will this help me become a better leader?" Miss Johnson's gaze softened slightly. "Think about it, Sebastian. How often have you truly considered the challenges your female colleagues face in the workplace? The subtle biases, the different expectations, the constant pressure to prove themselves? This exercise will give you a first-hand experience of what it's like to navigate the corporate world from a female perspective." Sebastian's initial shock began to give way to a mix of curiosity and determination. He'd always prided himself on being an ally to his female coworkers, but was it possible that he'd been missing something crucial? "And if I complete this challenge successfully?" he asked, his voice steadier now. Miss Johnson's smile widened. then you'll have demonstrated the kind of adaptability, empathy, and courage that we look for in our top executives. Complete this challenge, and that promotion is yours." Sebastian took a deep breath, weighing his options. On one hand, the idea of dressing as a woman for a week terrified him. He'd be the subject of gossip, maybe even ridicule. But on the other hand, this was his shot at the promotion he'd been working towards for years. And maybe, just maybe, he'd gain some valuable insights along the way.
"All right, Miss Johnson,"
he said, squaring his shoulders. "I accept your challenge." She nodded approvingly. "Excellent. I'll have HR send you some guidelines and resources to help you prepare. Remember, Sebastian, this isn't about playing dress-up or making a spectacle. It's about genuinely trying to understand a different perspective. I expect you to approach this with the same professionalism and dedication you bring to all your work." Sebastian nodded, his mind already racing with the logistics of the challenge ahead.
"Of course, Miss Johnson. I won't let you down."
As he left her office, Sebastian's head spun with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He had a week to prepare for the most unusual challenge of his career. Where would he even begin? The next few days passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Sebastian found himself in unfamiliar territory, navigating the world of women's fashion with the help of his sister, Sarah. She'd nearly fallen off her chair laughing when he'd called to explain the situation, but once she'd composed herself, she'd thrown herself into the task with gusto. "First things first," Sarah declared as they strode into a high-end department store. "We need to get you fitted for a bra. Can't have you looking lopsided in your new blouses." Sebastian's face burned as the saleswoman measured him, trying to ignore the curious glances from other shoppers. Next came the clothes. Sarah guided him through racks of pencil skirts, A-line dresses, and silk blouses. They settled on a wardrobe of mix-and-match pieces in neutral tones, black, navy, and cream, that would be appropriate for the office. "Now for the fun part," Sarah grinned, steering Sebastian towards the shoe department. "Heels." Sebastian eyed the rows of stilettos with trepidation. "Do I really have to wear those? Can't I just stick with flats?" Sarah shook her head firmly. "No way. If you're going to do this, you need to go all in. Don't worry, we'll start you off with something manageable, maybe a 2-inch heel." After an hour of wobbling up and down the aisles, Sebastian left with 3 pairs of heels: sleek black pumps, navy slingbacks, and a pair of nude kitten heels that Sarah assured him would go with everything. The final stop was the makeup counter, where a bubbly cosmetician named Jess took Sebastian under her wing. She walked him through a natural makeup routine, demonstrating how to apply foundation, mascara, and a subtle lip color. "Remember," Jess said as she handed Sebastian a bag full of products, "less is more when it comes to office makeup. You want to look polished, not like you're heading to a nightclub." By Sunday night, Sebastian's spare room had been transformed into a makeshift dressing area. Skirts and blouses hung neatly in the closet, shoes lined up beneath them. A vanity table held an array of unfamiliar bottles and tubes, moisturizer, foundation, concealer, and more. As he laid out his outfit for the next day, Sebastian's stomach churned with nervous anticipation. A knee-length black pencil skirt, a cream silk blouse with a bow at the neck, sheer black stockings, and those intimidating black pumps. It all looked so foreign, so unlike anything he'd ever worn before. He set his alarm an hour earlier than usual, knowing he'd need extra time to get ready. Sleep eluded him that night as his mind raced with worries and questions. How would his coworkers react? Would he be able to walk in those heels all day? What if he made a complete fool of himself? Monday morning arrived all too soon. Sebastian stood in front of the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the person staring back at him. The pencil skirt fit his hips, accentuating his looks. The silk blouse felt cool and smooth against his skin, the bow at the neck adding a touch of femininity. He'd managed to apply his makeup without poking himself in the eye, though it had taken several attempts to get his eyeliner even. A light dusting of blush added color to his cheeks, and a swipe of pale pink lipstick completed the look. The shoes, however, presented a challenge. Sebastian wobbled as he slipped his feet into the black pumps, gripping the edge of the dresser for balance. He took a few tentative steps, wincing at the unfamiliar pressure on the balls of his feet.
You can do this,
he muttered to himself, grabbing his purse, another foreign concept, and car keys. It's just clothes. You're still you underneath. The drive to work was nerve-wracking. Sebastian found himself hyper-aware of every glance from other drivers, convinced they could somehow tell his secret. By the time he pulled into the parking garage, his palms were slick with sweat. He sat in his car for a long moment, gathering his courage. This was it, the moment of truth. Taking a deep breath, Sebastian opened the door and stepped out, wobbling slightly on his heels. The click of his shoes echoed in the concrete structure as he made his way to the elevator. Each step was a careful balancing act, and he silently thanked Sarah for insisting on the lower heels to start. As he waited for the elevator, a group of his co-workers rounded the corner, engrossed in conversation. Sebastian's heart pounded as they approached. This was his first test. Would they recognize him? Would they laugh? To his surprise, they barely gave him a second glance, offering polite nods as they joined him in waiting for the elevator. The elevator ride was a study in awkward silence. Sebastian could feel curious eyes on him, but no one said a word. As they reached their floor, he steeled himself for the reactions that were sure to come. The office was already bustling with activity as Sebastian made his way to his desk. Heads turned as he passed, conversations stuttering to a halt. He could hear the whispers starting up behind him, but he kept his chin up and his gaze forward. "Sebastian?" a familiar voice called out. He turned to see Linda from accounting staring at him, her eyes wide with disbelief.
Is that really you?
He managed a small smile, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Good morning, Linda. Yes, it's me." A crowd was beginning to gather now, people craning their necks to get a look at the transformed Sebastian. He could see a mix of reactions: shock, amusement, confusion, and in a few cases, what looked like admiration. "What's going on?" someone called out. "Is this some kind of bet?" Sebastian took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders.
Actually, it's a challenge from Miss Johnson. I'll be dressing like this for the week as part of a leadership development exercise. A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd. Sebastian braced himself for mockery or derision, but to his surprise, many of his colleagues seemed genuinely intrigued. "That's actually pretty cool," said Mark from IT. "Takes guts to do something like that." Others nodded in agreement, and Sebastian felt a wave of relief wash over him. Maybe this wouldn't be as bad as he'd feared. As the initial shock wore off and people returned to their work, Sebastian settled in at his desk. He was acutely aware of the differences in his attire, the way the skirt restricted his movement, the constant need to adjust his posture to keep his balance in the heels. His first real test came mid-morning when he had to give a presentation to the marketing team. As he stood at the front of the conference room, he could feel all eyes on him. For a moment, his confidence wavered. Then he remembered Miss Johnson's words. This wasn't about playing dress-up, it was about gaining a new perspective. Taking a deep breath, Sebastian launched into his presentation. To his surprise, he found that the clothes actually helped him feel more poised and professional. The click of his heels as he moved around the room lent a certain authority to his words, and the formality of his outfit seemed to command respect from his audience. As the day wore on, Sebastian began to notice subtle differences in how people interacted with him. Some male colleagues who usually greeted him with hearty slaps on the back now kept a respectful distance. By the time he collapsed into his car at the end of the day, Sebastian's feet were aching and his back was sore from maintaining perfect posture. But as he reflected on the day's events, he realized he'd already gained some valuable insights. The rest of the week brought new challenges and revelations each day. On Tuesday, Sebastian opted for a navy A-line dress paired with the slingback heels. He found himself constantly aware of how he sat, careful to keep his knees together and his skirt smooth. During a client meeting, he noticed how the male client directed most of his comments to Sebastian's male colleague, despite Sebastian being the lead on the project.
It was a subtle slight, one he might not have picked up on before, but now it stood out glaringly. Wednesday saw Sebastian in a gray pencil skirt and a pale blue blouse. He'd grown more confident in applying his makeup, even experimenting with a slightly bolder lip color. Thursday brought an unexpected challenge when Sebastian realized he'd forgotten to shave his legs that morning. The stubble was barely visible, but he spent the day hyper-aware of it, constantly worried someone would notice. It was a small thing, but it highlighted the additional grooming expectations placed on women in professional settings. By Friday, Sebastian had settled into a routine. He chose a black wrap dress for his final day, paired with the nude kitten heels. As he moved through the office, he realized he was no longer the center of attention. His colleagues had adjusted to his new appearance, treating him much as they always had. In his final meeting of the week, Sebastian found himself seated next to Claire, a junior associate he'd worked with on several projects. As they waited for the meeting to start, Claire leaned over to him. "I just wanted to say," she whispered, "I think what you're doing is really great. It's made a lot of us feel seen, you know?" Sebastian was touched by her words, realizing that his challenge had impacted more than just his own perspective. It had opened up conversations throughout the office about gender dynamics and unconscious biases. As he packed up his things that evening, Sebastian felt a mix of relief and pride. He'd made it through the week, facing each challenge head-on. More than that, he felt like he'd gained a new understanding of the subtle and not-so-subtle ways gender impacted daily life in the office. Monday morning found Sebastian back in his usual suit and tie as he knocked on Miss Johnson's office door. She greeted him with a warm smile, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Well, Sebastian," she said, leaning back in her chair, "you've certainly given the office something to talk about this past week. How do you feel the challenge went?" Sebastian took a moment to gather his thoughts.
"It was eye-opening," he began. "I realized there were so many things I'd never considered before. The extra time and effort that goes into appearance, the subtle ways people treat you differently, the constant awareness of your own body and how others perceive you." Miss Johnson nodded encouragingly. "And how do you think this experience will impact your approach to leadership?" "I think it's made me much more aware of the diverse experiences of our team," Sebastian replied. "I've gained a new appreciation for the challenges many of our employees face, and I believe it will help me be a more empathetic and inclusive leader." A smile spread across Miss Johnson's face. "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, Sebastian. You've demonstrated not just the willingness to step outside your comfort zone, but the ability to learn and grow from the experience. I'm pleased to inform you that the promotion is yours." Sebastian's heart soared, a grin breaking across his face. "Thank you, Miss Johnson. I won't let you down." Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.